developers, and I want to invite Eldad Fuchs, the Appwrite CEO, to talk with you about the great product called Appwrite.
Oh,
Eldad,
thank you. Such a warm welcome. Thank you so much, Barak. So yeah, I'll just share my screen now.
great. And anyone, if you want to ask your questions, you can write them down in the comments, and we will answer them one by one.
Yes, so let's get started. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you all the guys from the Appwrite community, all the guys from the Flutter community. Thanks again to Barak and the Israeli Flutter developers community for hosting us. This is a great opportunity for us, and hopefully you will enjoy the talk. So before I start, I'll just have a few words to introduce myself to anyone who doesn't know me yet. So my name is Eldad. I'm based here in Tel Aviv. I've been coding for about 20 years now. I'm not that old, I guess. I'm 32. Just started really, really young. I was the CTO of Walla News and Career Page. If you don't know Walla News, it's like the Israeli equivalent to Yahoo, a really similar site, both media portals that have email service. And I'm the creator of Appwrite. I founded Appwrite about 8 months ago as an open source project. And since then, we really grew a lot. I'll talk about it just in a few seconds. And just to say that Appwrite it's not just me. It's a community. It's a big community. We have a big and growing community. Currently, the Appwrite team has about 5 main core contributors. It always keeps changing, but that's basically the amount. The product is already over 100 developers that contributed to the project, and we have contributed from about 30 countries. We had to send a lot of swag. I saw someone earlier that received some stickers a few months ago, so I'm really happy they reached their destination. And to start talking about Appwrite, I really like to start from the beginning. Like, why did I create Appwrite? Why did we even started this project? And I think the best way to start describing it is by focusing on some of the issues. And the issues about Appwrite, I really, both as a software developer and as a technology leader, I felt like software development has become really, really hard. That's the main problem, basically. But I really like to split this problem into 3 main criteria where I like to focus to really understand what are my problems with software development in 2020. And the first problem that I felt, both as a developer and as a technology leader, is that there are so many things that a developer has to know these days. Just to name a few, this is just a list that popped up of my mind, but I'm sure that if I ask like 100 different developers, I'll get probably like 1,000 different answers. And there's so many things that a developer has to know now. Either if you are a client developer, a full stack developer, a backend developer, you have to know like how authentication work. You have to know encryption. You have to know about responsive design. You have to know about mobile technologies, about performance, about scaling, about DNS. And when I was a technology leader, when I was a CTO, when I was an R&D manager or a team leader, I was like thinking, I was trying to recruit developers, and I was like writing job description. I was thinking to myself, am I writing a job description like to hire a human being or an entire IT department? Isn't even possible for one person to know so many things. So I was creating a lot of like onboarding processes, a lot of training for developers, but it never really felt right. Like it felt like it's too complicated. And I was always told my developers, like, if you're getting into a coma right now and you will wake up in 2 years, you'll probably find it very difficult to find a job, because everything you have to know so many things, and everything just keep on changing. Like, all the technologies change. If we're looking at the front-end community, so every 2 years we have a new framework breaking out and becoming the most top hot trend, and it's really, really hard to keep up. So that's one of the main problems that I felt. And the second one is, and this one I felt it especially when I was managing multiple technology teams, is that a lot of the work across different teams is really repetitive. at the end of the day, I think, and I don't have this backed up, but I think it's pretty close to the real number. I think that something like 80% or 70% of the job that we are doing as software developers is pretty similar. Most of the apps are really just managing data. They are processing it in some kind of a way. They are segmenting the data to different kind of roles, different access control. But most of the work is really, really generic and repetitive. And the worst thing about it, in my opinion, is that it's very legitimate that we'll have like a lot of repetitive work across different organizations. But when you see different teams, and if sometimes in really bad cases, you can see two developers sitting just across from each other, and you can see they are working on really, really similar things. And sometimes this thing can be like the same API, or like some kind of a data management task, or like having some kind of a background task, or some kind of a messaging and queuing mechanism. So this was a real pain that I felt as a technology leader. Like I felt like we're wasting a lot of time. We're doing a lot of our job is about boring tasks that we've already solved, and we don't have really enough time to focus on our own products. So this is another major pain that I felt. And the last pain, and maybe the one that is closest to my heart, is that in 2020, software security is still very, very hard to master. And I'm talking with experience of almost 20 years as a software developer, and I'm really fanatic about software security. And I can't say like in full confidence that I understand the full complexity of software security. And software security is also one of those tasks that never really finish. You never really finish it, because there's always new stuff to learn, new attack vectors. It's like a chase between you and attackers. So I've actually seen in my own eyes that a single line of code has distracted an application or exposed really, really sensitive data. And, looking at all of these problems, you start thinking like, does it really has to be so hard? When I when I was starting my way as a software developer, I was all constantly saying that software development isn't rocket science. And now in 2020, I'm not that confident when I'm saying that anymore, because things have really become really complex. And when you look at different industries, and even on our own tech industry, and you try to figure out what has humanity have done when things started to be too complex, and you always come across the same concept of abstraction. And you can see abstraction even in the Industrial Revolution, where humans had to work really, really hard to produce stuff. And then machinery and factories came in and made everything a lot easier. But you can look even at more similar examples, like how the cloud, like AWS, GCP, and Azure, how they help by abstracting the complexity of managing physical data center. When I was a CTO, I had to manage a physical data center, and it was just a nightmare. You had to plan everything months ahead. You always had to be over capacity, like to anticipate for surprises. And it's really, really hard. And then came the cloud and made everything really, really simple. You just have to click a few buttons. You don't have to order like physical servers and disks. You just have to push a few clicks on your mouse, and you get all this storage and all this compute power in your hands, and you don't have to worry about this kind of things. So I was thinking to myself, why aren't we as a software industry, as software developers, applying the same concept of abstraction for our own work? And that's basically how Appwrite came to life, by the concept of abstraction. And what Appwrite is really trying to do, Appwrite is trying to make software development a lot less painful and more fun, and giving developer more time to create innovation. And it's doing so by, I'll just go with the most direct definition of what Appwrite is doing. Appwrite is an open source end-to-end backend server packaged as a set of Docker microservices. Appwrite abstracts the complexity behind cloud and backend development to make developers' life easier by giving their project a much better starting point. And just to say it in a little bit in a more plain way, Appwrite is a backend server that exposes a REST HTTP REST API that gives your app all these tools and API that are very generic, very necessary for building a modern app. And it gives them to you like out of the box that you can immediately start working and developing your app without having to know all this complexity that happens in the background and having all these years of experience to understand all the security concepts and everything that is related in developing a really complex backend server. So just to like have more emphasis on what Appwrite is doing, Appwrite is providing your app with different APIs, a very simple REST API. They are really consistent and easy to understand for managing stuff like authentication and user management. So Appwrite gives you basically the API to create new user accounts in your app. It gives you APIs to authenticate your user using different authentication methods like email and password or OAuth authentication. In the future, maybe stuff like LDAP or SOAP authentication, stuff like that. Appwrite also gives you a database service to make your app persistent. You can save documents for your user or for your app. You can segment which users or teams of users or specific role of a user inside the team can just view the documents in your app. And there is a really simple mechanism for managing access control and permissions for each document in your database. And the same thing about storage. Appwrite gives you the ability to upload files into your server. Appwrite also take care of all the security concerns about encrypting the file, making sure your file aren't executable in your server. Appwrite also runs an antivirus server in the background that checks every file that goes into the system and goes out of the system to make sure your users are safe from being exposed to some kind of a malware. And there are a lot of other services that Appwrite provides, and some of the services that are marked with an asterisk are services that we're just going to release in some of our next versions. And you can basically look on our GitHub repository and check all the entire product roadmap, which is publicly exposed. Everyone can take a look, everyone can send suggestions, and we really appreciate any suggestions. Some of the features that you can see now in Appwrite have been suggested by community members, and some of them are even developed by community members. So it's really great. And being open source really give Appwrite a lot of power to collaborate with the community and run a lot faster and basically create a much better product, because we take so much feedback from so many people that a priority product wouldn't be possible for it. And Appwrite has this amazing superpower as in the form of a big developers community that are really dedicated and passionate about the product. So just to give an overview of the architecture in Appwrite, which really help understand the concepts. So you can see on the left that Appwrite can accept connection from multiple clients, and actually Appwrite can work in 3 different variations. Appwrite can work directly in front of your client app, whether it's a web app, it's a mobile app, and you can just connect with the SDK, with a JavaScript SDK or a Flutter SDK, which I'll talk about later. And you can just connect between them directly, no proxy in the middle, and they can communicate, and the HTTP layer already take care of all the permission and the access control and the user authentication, so you don't have to worry about that. The other formation that Appwrite can work alongside the backend server, because Appwrite also has a backend SDK for languages like Python, like PHP, like Node.js, like Ruby, and we're always adding more SDKs. And one of the next SDKs that we are planned to release is a Dart SDK for connecting Appwrite using the Dart backend. I know it's not very popular yet, but it might be, and it's really easy for us to release this kind of new SDKs. So it's something we are planning to release. And the third variation that Appwrite can work is Appwrite can work actually inside your internal network behind your backend server. So let's say you have a backend server and you want to interact from your backend with Appwrite, you can do that. And because Appwrite is a self-hosted solution, you don't get all the network latency that you would usually get if you were connecting with a cloud service that is sitting in a remote location. And sometimes this location might be very far from your own data center. So by hosting Appwrite in your own data center, it can be really good in performance. So you can connect to Appwrite from your client or from your backend today using a REST API. We do plan to release a GraphQL API very, very soon. We already have a branch for it on our GitHub repository. And we also plan to release a gRPC protocol, which is really popular among DevOps these days, not so much for Flutter developers or client developers. Just a second. So on the green layer, you can basically see the Appwrite security layer. This is where Appwrite takes care of most of the security concerns that you usually have to write yourself or had to learn yourself. And some of these security features includes all the input validation, all the data that is coming from your user is validated by Appwrite. Appwrite is also validating rate limiting and abuse control, which helps protect your API from malicious attempts to hack user accounts and stuff like that. And Appwrite is doing that like built in. You don't have to take care about it. You actually don't have to know about it, but I don't like to say it because I think developer should know what happens in the background. They shouldn't be like stupid and they have black boxes, but you should know what happens there, but you shouldn't worry about it. Appwrite also takes care of audit logs, so every actions your users are making in the API is being logged by Appwrite, whether it's a user login, file creation, document creation, everything is logged and stored for a certain amount of time, and you can access it whenever you want to make sure your server is safe and sound. And behind the green layer, you can actually see all the Appwrite services that I've talked about before. And on the right is the complexity layer. This is actually what Appwrite is trying to hide from you. This is what Appwrite doesn't want you to waste time on. These are basically services that process data and manage data in multiple ways. And it's a boring part. It's basically the part that isn't important to building your product. What Appwrite is trying to do is give you a lot more time to focus on your product, on giving value to your product, and not on doing repetitive tasks, which is the Appwrite maintainers team mission in life. And we really, really like it, so you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so let's continue. So Appwrite comes with a built-in console, which lets you control everything in the API from the UI, which is really, really awesome because let's face it, most of us don't really like looking at JSON files and using the command line and all these kind of tools for HTTP visualization and stuff like that. So Appwrite comes with a built-in dashboard, which lets you monitor what happens entirely in your server, like the usage, the amount of requests, the bandwidth, everything related to statistic, and also about your data. So you can manage your files, you can manage your users, you can manage your database document. Actually, just in this version, we have released a really long anticipated new database UI, which basically gives Appwrite the capabilities of a CMS. So we kind of created some kind of a combination of a headless CMS and a backend server, which really gives users a lot of power and saves them tons of time. Yeah, so this is the most exciting part of the day. We are happy to announce that just released today the Flutter Sdk. And yeah, I'm hearing Barak in the background.
You can all of you can do something like clap your hands in the comments. It's really exciting for us. Thank you.
Yeah, so this. Yeah, sure. I'm happy myself. I've done it for myself. Don't thank me. And so yeah, so it's really exciting because Appwrite is really, really good for client developers, and it was now only available for web developers. And right now we gave all these superpowers to Flutter developers that can just use Appwrite to integrate with their Flutter app. And the new integration really comes to life when we speak about it, what is the Flutter integration? So it's also the capability of Appwrite to integrate with Flutter apps, but it's also our Appwrite SDK for Flutter, which is live, as you can see in the screenshot. And you can like the package, because it really helps increase the scoring. Right now, the scoring is only on 74 because it isn't that popular yet, because it just came out today. So give a like. I'll post the link in the description. I'll tell Barak later to add this link in the description, or I can post it in the comments later. Or if any of you
I
can
will
do
edit
that for me,
right
that
now.
will be
I will
also
edit
great.
right now.
Yeah, sure. So we have released the Flutter SDK, and it means that every capability that Appwrite has, you can basically take advantage of it and use it to build your next Flutter app, and you can build your next Flutter app a lot faster. And the fact that Appwrite is open source, so you can use it for free. You don't have to go into a paid service or be afraid from the term called a billing bomb. Yeah, you don't be afraid to receive the bill at the end of the month, because it's open source and self-hosted. So you can really decrease the cost, especially if you're just playing around with it. And another great thing about it is that you can use it from your development environment, and yeah, you can use it on your local host. You don't even have to have a server. It's really easy to start. And yeah, and now, okay, so we announced the Flutter integration. I really want to show now is to give you some kind of look and feel of how easy it is to integrate with Appwrite and how much you can benefit from Appwrite. So installing Appwrite is really, really simple. Because Appwrite is based on Docker containers, it basically can run anywhere you want. It can run on your own local host, whether you're using Linux, whether you're using Mac OS or Windows, it can work on your machine. It does require virtualization, which comes with most PCs today. And so you just have to run this command on your terminal. If you have Windows, you should probably have some tweaks there. But for Unix, just copy paste this command and wait like 2 minutes, and Appwrite server will be up on your environment. And it's not just an Appwrite server that comes up on your environment. It's a fully blown architecture, a microservice architecture that is working on your environment, and it consumes like 0 resources. It's really, really light and thin. Actually, Appwrite is so thin that it can run on a Raspberry Pi device. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It can run on a computer which is in the size of a credit card. So it's really, really awesome. And after you install Appwrite, if you're using Flutter, and this is a Flutter meetup, so you just have to do the pub-get Appwrite, which will install the Appwrite SDK on your Flutter environment. But if you're using any other environment, like if it's a JavaScript or Node.js or PHP or Python, you just have to find your own package manager, and Appwrite supports those environments as well. So just before we jump into some examples, I really like to emphasize the simplicity of Appwrite with 2 main examples. The first one is the file upload, which seems like a common task, but it's a common task mainly because most of the time we don't really think about it too much. Most of the time you will develop an app and you will need to upload some kind of a file, and you say, okay, you'll tell your backend developer, or sometimes it's you yourself, well, we need an upload script. But building a good upload API is really, really hard. And I like to emphasize that in this way. Like on the left, you can see all the requirements that what I think a good upload API needs to have. And on the right, you can see what actually, when using Appwrite, what you have to do at the end. So for writing a good upload API, you'd probably need just to like upload a file, to limit the file size, to validate the file. Maybe you just want to accept images. Maybe you just want to accept a file that is not bigger than, let's say, 100 megabytes. You probably want, for a good API, not a common API, you would want to scan it for viruses to protect your users. And I'm not talking about protecting your own data center, because if the file is not executable, you don't care if it's a malware or not. But if it's a virus, your user might be executing it on their machine, and you want to protect them. You don't hate them, you love them. They're your users. So I talked about preventing file execution. You would probably want to generate some thumbnails. Like, you don't want to show like 1,000 on 1,000 image on your user avatar. Like, you want to have smaller image. Maybe you want to compress it really, really well. Maybe you want to use some advanced image formatting protocols like WebP. All right, so you're going to save this big file now on your storage. You might want to compress it, because you pay for storage. You don't want to pay a lot when you can pay less. So by compressing the file, you can make it you can reduce its size. So you'd want to compress your file. And if it's a really, really sensitive file, like an email or some kind of medical information about your user, you probably would want to encrypt it as well. So now things has gotten really, really complicated, and you'd probably never do that to begin with. But with Appwrite, you get all this stuff for free, because it's open source and it's ready to use, and you just already install it by submitting one command in your terminal. So at the end of the day, how do you use it in Flutter? So I like to look at the code on the right. I like to split it into three main steps. The first step is importing the package. Importing the package and initting your Appwrite SDK. Initting your Appwrite SDK requires as much as creating a new client instance, setting your project ID, which is available through your Appwrite console, which I showed you in the screenshots before. And okay, so this is the first part. You have to import your package, you have to initialize your client, and then you just have to send an API call to Appwrite. So you use the storage API, the storage object of Appwrite. You create a new file. You tell Appwrite where is the file located on your device. And we have live example for Flutter apps on our GitHub organization, which we can share later on our Discord channel or here in the comments. And you have to set which user has the permission for your file, like who can read it, who can update the file. Appwrite has a very simple permission mechanism. You just have to set the user and the user ID, or even if it's a team, so the team and the team ID, and you can have multiple permission here. You can like say, okay, give read permission only to these 3 users, or give read permission to no one, and the file won't be readable. And the same goes for the write permission. And okay, after you send the request to Appwrite, to the Appwrite API, your instance of Appwrite API, you can get the result, and you can just parse it. It's a JSON response. You can do whatever you want with it. Hopefully, you won't get any errors, but you can handle errors as well, because Appwrite returns promises or futures as we use in Dart. And that's it. You get all these amazing things for free with so little code. Like, it's such a short and simple code, and it's really easy to get started and even to grow with. And okay, so the second example I like to show is user authentication. And I like to show user authentication because I spent 6 months of my life building a user authentication API. It was really, really secure. It was really, really sensitive. So I got to learn a lot about how to build these kind of things. And I said to myself, man, I never want to do that again. It's so boring. I don't want to repeat 6 months of my life. So hopefully I saved those 6 months for you. And just as I showed before in the upload example, you can look on the left on the list of like criterions that your user authentication service, a good user authentication service would have. And you want to have some kind of a login method. You want some OAuth providers, and Appwrite supports, I don't remember the right number, maybe someone can correct me in the comments, but something like 18 or 15 different OAuth providers, including Facebook, GitHub, Google, Microsoft, Bitly, Discord, anything that you can possibly think of. You would want an abuse protection, because you don't want your login service to be exposed to like brute force attacks and stuff like that. So in Appwrite, you get an abuse control built in. Each user has a certain amount of attempts to try to log in per a certain amount of time. And the API also returns you all the rate limiting headers, so you can be really well aware of the status of the user and the status of the abuse control. And another thing you would probably want to have, you want to have password hashing. And this is like the most common security issue in the last decade, where passwords were not hashed, they were saved in plain text. So Appwrite already implies the best security practices out there to hash your user password. It uses a bcrypt algorithm which hash the passwords, and you can never reverse the password to what it was initially. And Appwrite like do all the comparison and stuff for you, so you don't have to worry about any of that. We talked about audit logging. A good user authentication service needs a good audit login to, like, maybe you want to analyze if this user was logged in from France and a day, an hour later, he was logged in from Brazil. So maybe there's some issue there. So you want a good auditing for your authentication service. You might want to save user preferences, session management, like where is this user is logged in from his iPhone, from his Android device, or maybe from multiple browsers. So you want to control that. You want to maybe delete sessions, or have a list of them on your user account page. Yeah, so the list goes on and on. It's really complicated. I've spent 6 months of my life on that, and I swear I'm never going to waste them again. So I've built Appwrite. Yeah, I've got it. It's open source. I can use it whenever I want, and you can too. And as we looked before, how do you imply that into your app? So again, you just have to import the Appwrite SDK. You have to initialize your client, set your project ID, send a request to Appwrite. In this case, it's a request to create a new user account. You just have to provide Appwrite with an email and password. You can optionally also provide a name argument there, but not shown in this example. And once you send that, if everything is okay, then your user will be created, and Appwrite is taking care of all the complexity behind it. So you will just have fun, and you will have time to be creative and innovative and dedicate all your time in building a good app and having good user experience and providing value for your users. Yeah, so these were the examples. There are a lot of online resources to help you more. Was just like the tip of the iceberg, just like to give you a good look and feel of how easy it is to use Appwrite and how beneficial it can be for your next app. And there are a lot of resources online that you can use. The best way to get started with Appwrite is to go to the Getting Started guide on Appwrite.io under the documentation page. The Getting Started guide is really simple. It's really short. I think it's less than 200 words, something like that, something like 2.5 minutes read. Basically, if you've seen the example, you can start right away. You don't even need to read it, but you should read it because there are some small nuances there about how to set up your Android platform and how to set up your iOS platform and stuff like that. You can review the Appwrite Client API spec. In this case, you can see in the screenshot the account API, but the best way to really understand all the power that Appwrite has is to look through the different APIs, look at the different routes, and understand what are the capabilities and how you can leverage those APIs to improve your product, to write it faster, to write it in a much more secure way. You can visit the GitHub repository. If you have any issues, you can open a GitHub issue. You can send pull requests. You can suggest new feature. We are really community oriented. We really love the community being involved and helping shape the product and shape our roadmap. And we also really believe in transparency. So everything about Appwrite is out there. Our product roadmap, our discussion, our designs about new features we design are basically, you can look at the sketches where we define how we are going to interact with the cache and the memory and the queuing and everything. So it's also, beside it's a cool product in my opinion, it's really interesting to see how we develop it. It's like a reality show actually. It's like having a
That,
big brother,
wait
and
a
you can
minute,
look and you can see how
just a
our team,
minute.
team of
There's issues of sound.
developers from all kind of different countries cooperate together to build a great product together. And it's really fun, and it's basically so on our Discord, what we communicate.
Eldad, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. It's I think we can't hear the
Can you
last.
hear me now?
Yeah, of course. There was some problem
Can you
with the
hear me?
sound. Yes, try to say the few sentence again.
Can you hear me now, Barak?
Yes, I can. Do you hear me? I can hear you. Hello, Eldad, do you hear me?
What?
Do you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, great. So just say again the sentences that you said right now, because there was some problem with the sound with the live video.
Yeah, sure. What slide did you lose me?
Just
Is it that
about
one or the previous
Discord,
one?
the community, just the community about the Discord and things like that.
Yeah, so you can join our Discord channel where we provide support. We have discussions, and we can also talk about off-topic stuff if we all love programming. And
I can't hear you again. I can't hear you again.
now,
Yeah, now I can hear you.
yeah, okay. So hopefully it won't get stuck. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a great opportunity to thank our community member Bartolomej and Ali that spent a lot of hours on making this integration possible. Honestly, it wouldn't be possible without their work. They've really pushed this forward. They really wanted to see Appwrite working with Flutter, and they gave me the drive to push it forward. And thank you so much, guys. Also, a big thank you to the Flutter Israel developers community, both for hosting us, but also for helping us test the integration. We've got a lot of Israeli community members that help around the testing phase of the Flutter integration. And anyone that wants to join us, we are really welcoming and open. You don't have to have any certain experience. We accept developers from all level, and we are willing to mentor and to help and to walk through, hold your hand during your first stages, for both like providing us feedback or code reviews or even contributing code, which is like the ultimate goal eventually. So thank you so much, guys, and thanks to the entire Appwrite community for being so
Thank you very
supportive
much.
about this project.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for that. It was
So
a great.
basically, yeah, so basically that's it. We'd love to see you join our community, both on Discord. You can put the star on the Appwrite repository on GitHub. We'd love to see you contribute to the project. We really, really want this to be a community-driven project, and I think that's the main thing that differentiate us and make us like better. And yeah, I would love to answer any questions that you might have, but if it's too technical, I would probably prefer to answer them later on Discord.
Great. So everyone can just write their questions here in the comments. If you want to join to Appwrite Community, it's a really great opportunity for you to make your career better. So you can just see the links below this video and join to Discord, WhatsApp, Telegram, or anything else. And of course, you can just go to appwrite.io and see the documents there. So that's all of that.
Yeah, that's all. I'll answer any question.
So I wait for questions. I think
Yes. Yeah, so I see a question from Savit. Are user account field customizable to add, remove fields? So basically, yes, we do have an open issue with a bug there, but it should be fine. Yeah, so we're using a lot of languages, basically Appwrite. Sorry, the question is which languages are you guys using to build Appwrite? So we're using a lot of languages because Appwrite is cross-platform technology agnostic, but the main core API is written in PHP and is packaged as a Docker container. If you want to contribute to Appwrite, you would probably find it easier if you know PHP, but you don't have to. A lot of our contributors came with no PHP background. And we also welcome any contributors like that Kotlin, Dart, Java, Python, like any language you can think of. Yeah, so another question is, does the Flutter SDK support Flutter for web? So it hasn't been tested yet. It should work. Most of the actions should work. Maybe there's a glitch there with the OAuth authentication that need to be validated. It will be a great way to contribute, like to help us validate the Flutter SDK for Flutter for web. Any other question, guys? Yeah, so I think that's it, Barak.
Great.
So
Thank you very much, Eldad. It was a great meetup, great lecture for us. I'm sure that everyone will use it, and it will, save the time and money, of course, especially during the development process of Flutter apps. So everyone, you can give it a chance. Just give it a chance. It's a new product. It's a great product, and you will not regret, I'm sure. Yes, Eldad?
hopefully, hopefully that's what I'm doing most of the day, making sure people don't regret stuff.
Great. So again, I must say thank you, Eldad, for this knowledge. I'm sure everyone will be very happy for it. Just share my screen here. So again, thank you. Last thing about the community week. This is just one of the rest of 5 meetups in this week. That all of that is part of the feed Flutter Israel Developers Community Week. Tomorrow there will be another meetup with SQL Link. If you can just Google it. It's a huge company in Israel. So you can join for free. Of course, the links is here below this video. So just invite to click the link, register to this meetup, and tomorrow it will be. So that's all, I think. So thank you everyone for watching, for listening to us. Thank you, Eldad, for being here. And we'll meet in the next meetups, in the communities, in the groups. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.